So, my name is Nuritzi Sanchez, and Deo has been kind enough to set this up. I'm really excited to talk to you just because I've been reading a lot about you, and um, I've always been interested in the entrepreneurship world, but um, I haven't had very much experience with it, and I haven't connected with as many people, I guess, as I'd like to. Um, I'm very interested, particularly because you are a young woman with a family who has managed to be very successful. And I know that there are a lot of, uh, I guess, difficulties for women, particularly with children, to be in this type of an environment because you have to work so hard and I guess devote so many hours, and balancing the family life is extremely difficult. Um, I guess, how do you think you were able to manage that? What did you have to do to prioritize to be able to have this family?
Um, well, it's an interesting question. I think a lot of women face that. Any woman who has a professional career and also kids has to figure out how to juggle a bunch of things. And people talk a lot about work-life balance, but I just don't think a balance ever exists. It's always a work-life imbalance, and it's just a question of how you prioritize and how you get things done. I think the number
Mhm.
one thing, though, is actually to have a support network and to have a
Mhm.
partner who actually is 50% in not only supporting you as a professional, but also as a mother. And I'm just extraordinarily fortunate that my husband, in particular, in spite of the fact that he has also extraordinarily challenging career, is willing to
Mhm.
wash the dishes at night and
Mhm.
vacuum the floors and read stories to the
Mhm.
kids while I get a few emails out.
Mhm.
And that's extraordinarily important. I'm also really, really fortunate that I grew up in Palo Alto, so my parents are actually close by. It's
Mhm.
not uncommon that 2 nights out of the week that I have to go out for dinner with a portfolio CEO.
Mhm.
Um, and in that case, if my husband also happens to have something like that as well, I'm really lucky because my parents will actually take care of our kids, and I don't have to worry that it's a stranger or a babysitter. It's actually family. And
Yeah.
in reality, my kids actually prefer to be with grandma and grandpa, right? And so I'm really lucky in that sense.
Mhm. Yeah, that's great. Um, okay, so I guess talking more about being a female in this type of a world, I actually recently heard something about how females, I guess, have evolved in the workplace. And before, they were told, be smart, but don't be too smart. Be athletic, but don't be too athletic because you're kind of infringing on the man's world. And now we have been brought up saying you can do anything you want. You can be as smart or as athletic as you want to be, but be hot. And I guess I'm curious, especially with your experience in both a larger company and also in the entrepreneurial world, how that comes out. And I guess if you would think that you have to be hot more so or less so than in a company, or whether or not you even think that's true,
Yeah.
and yeah, how you use your feminine qualities, I guess.
Well, I highly doubt that Mike brought me into this partnership because I was hot. Although I would love to believe
Mhm.
that at some points, but I actually just think that you should be world class, and
Mhm.
um, and I think that means actually, if you're an athlete, you should strive to be a world class athlete. If you
Mhm.
are a professional in anything, you should always strive to be world class in that.
Mhm.
And I don't think actually anything around appearance has anything to do with that if you actually do strive to be world class. Now, if
Mhm.
you aren't striving to be world class and you want the shortcut, then sure, there are lots of ways in which you can bypass those rules, but at the end of the day, those all catch up to you. And
Mhm.
someday, at some point, someone's going to realize that you're not world class and that you've
Mhm.
gotten ahead as a result of these shortcuts.
Mhm.
And I don't think that feels good for
Right.
women, for men, for anyone. And you want to be you want to be judged on the things that you do and
Mhm.
the work that you create,
Mhm.
not on things that are completely out of your control.
Okay. I mean, I guess that stems from the idea that everyone says that women have to work harder to prove themselves, that, the workplace isn't in fact equal. And I guess I'm interested in your experiences with that, if you have had any. Have you experienced that it's pretty much equal?
Yeah,
Or,
I mean, I think that's,
okay.
in a lot of ways, I do feel that's a huge myth meant to scare
Hmm.
off women from being involved in male dominated fields. I think
Okay.
that, if anything, Silicon Valley, as an example, is a great meritocracy. I have been nothing but welcomed with open arms into every kind of environment that I've tried to get myself into. And I've worked predominantly in male dominated fields, whether it was in
Mm-hmm.
electrical engineering or in my PhD program doing math modeling and computer security. And now in
Mm-hmm.
venture capital and startup world, I just see, uh, I see people around me. If anything, they are trying to support me and trying to put me at the forefront, trying to help me get to the next level. I don't
Okay.
necessarily want to be recognized purely for the fact that I'm a woman. I want to be
Mm-hmm.
recognized for being awesome at what I do.
Right. Okay. And also, so I was listening to some of your talks that you gave at Stanford, and you mentioned that you guys like to fund thunder lizards, and that you believe that entrepreneurs, I guess, hatch from these radioactive eggs. And I guess I was curious, do you think that entrepreneurs are born like this, or can you become this through learning experience, or what does it really take to, I guess, become this radioactive egg? Is it innate? I
Well,
don't know.
I think there's two different elements. That yes, there are parts that are actually sort of innate in your
Mm-hmm.
characteristics. So, and that would be around whether or not you're a risk seeker, or if you're very risk averse. There are some people who love stable environments, who love
Mm-hmm.
having people constantly commend them for their actions, or to have recognition for everything that they do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and those people tend to be much more successful in large companies. And this is not a value judgment on that person or whether or not they're smart or whether or
Mm-hmm.
not they're extraordinarily competent. I've seen very, very competent and very, very intelligent people who just work better in large companies. A small company, startup, or an entrepreneur is a totally different animal. The most successful ones we've seen are the ones that don't take no for an answer. They're the ones that, when a huge barrier is put in front of them, they see it as a minor speed bump. It's a fundamental characteristic in the way they see the world. And
Mm-hmm.
yes, some of that can be trained and some of that can be learned.
Mm-hmm.
But if you fundamentally have a risk averse character, then
Mm-hmm.
you're gonna be fighting against all these sort of inherent characteristics in yourself. And so
Right.
so there's definitely a nature portion, but there's also a nurture
Mm-hmm.
portion that I believe exists, which is why I
Mm-hmm.
teach entrepreneurship at Stanford.
Right. Okay. And I guess also it seems like you've had a very technical education, I guess. And you mentioned in the lecture also that you really believe that it's important to have a co-founder that's technical, or, somebody who's savvy in that arena. I'm a total fuzzy, so I've been having kind of trouble uh, just envisioning how I would even go about starting a life of entrepreneurship, since I don't have any technical background at all. Do you find that fuzzies who have an idea go to, like, how do they find somebody who's technical, or how do they overcome this?
Well, I think there's a lot of different ways, but the
Mm-hmm.
best founders that I've found
Mm-hmm.
who are not technical are the
Mm-hmm.
ones who have the ability to get a bunch of people around them so excited about an idea that
Mm-hmm.
people want to join that cause. And so it's the ability to be an amazing business or marketing mind. And so
Mm-hmm.
I actually do think that you need to have uh, really sort of four elements in a startup. One is on the technical side, you need two components, which is someone who is a technical visionary,
Mm-hmm.
and also you need someone who can execute on that technical vision. Sometimes that can be the same person at the very very early stages. On the other hand, you actually need to have someone with some business vision and also business execution know-how, and
Mm-hmm.
um, and that also is equally important. And so for the people out there who are not technically savvy, there's this whole component around marketing and business that is absolutely critical, where it's
Mm-hmm.
not just product focused, but it's all around the business model. So how do you price that product? How do you
Mm-hmm.
bring it to market? How do you do demand creation? How do you evaluate your demand creation strategies? What are the
Mm-hmm.
partnerships that you need to put into place? What is actually a product versus
Mm-hmm.
what are the things that you're selling? And so all of these components,
Mm-hmm.
including who are your customers, how do you define those customers, what are the archetypes, how does your
Mm-hmm.
product actually serve those customers, that's nothing that you don't need technical savvy in order to do that. What you
Mm-hmm.
do need is a lot of business savvy. And so
Right.
I do believe that those are equally important, and
Mm-hmm.
you hardly ever find that in one single person in terms
Mm-hmm.
of both that technical knowledge as well as that ability to understand the business on a really fundamental level. So
Okay.
yeah, it's very unusual for us to fund a one person founding team. And
Mm-hmm.
usually we see it in a combination of at least two people, one of which is really taking care of making sure that everything runs on time.
Okay. Um, Also, I guess, did you always know that you wanted to be an entrepreneur, or, and I mean, even that term is kind of vague. And that, did you have an idea that you felt very passionately about, or how did you decide to, I guess, follow this path?
Well, so I, although we're innovating on the venture capital model, I wouldn't call
Hmm.
myself really an entrepreneur. I would say that
Okay.
we support entrepreneurs.
Hmm.
Um, did I know that I wanted to be on this side? I don't know. So what I've always done is I've always followed what I really feel passionately about and things that
Hmm.
really made me excited to wake up in the morning. So
Hmm.
when I decided to major in electrical engineering, robotics was something that I really was into, and I
Hmm.
just couldn't imagine doing anything else. And so I
Hmm.
loved waking up in the morning and thinking about those types of problems.
Hmm.
When I went and worked at McKinsey, I was really interested in the types of businesses that I was seeing. I really wanted to be exposed to something outside of the engineering world, and so working at a company like McKinsey was really exciting for me. I got to travel all over the world. I got
Hmm.
to work with CEOs of really large companies,
Hmm.
and so that was exciting to me. And then the next step for me was I wanted to see what VC was like, and I had an
Hmm.
extraordinary opportunity to work with Ted Dintersmith, who was just a renowned VC out on the East Coast,
Hmm.
and received some of the most amazing mentorship that I've ever received. And
Hmm.
then after that, I realized I really wanted to go back to my technical roots. And so I ended up back
Hmm.
in a PhD program at Stanford. And again, that
Hmm.
wasn't career planning. It was just something I
Hmm.
really
I
felt
like
like I
to do.
really wanted to do. And it was something that I
Hmm.
was really interested in. And then when Mike pulled me into Floodgate, again, it
Hmm.
was something that I discovered I really loved at Stanford was working with entrepreneurs at a really early stage, and this was just an
Hmm.
opportunity to professionalize that love and that passion.
Hmm. Okay. Um, yeah, because I mean, I'm definitely in the midst of still figuring out what I want to do. And it's, I don't know. It's sometimes demoralizing to hear people that say, you should just do something just to gain experience, even if you don't like it, that, you should really care about finances more so than anything as you're young. And I don't know, all of these things that go against following your heart and following what you really want to do. So I guess it's encouraging to hear that you just kind of went for whatever you wanted to do, and that led to, I guess, your success.
Yeah, and I think it's just important to always follow, to know what you're really interested in, and don't let other voices sort of talk you out of it. So I think that's exactly the same thing that leads a lot of women not to major in electrical engineering, is that they hear that there's a lot of guys and not a lot of women. Well, I don't think that's a really good reason not to major in electrical engineering. You can make friends outside of the classroom. So why is it that you have to have friends inside of your classroom? What does it matter that there's a bunch of dudes hanging around? Same thing in venture capital or in entrepreneurship. What does it matter if in a company there's a bunch of guys and not enough girls? You can have girlfriends outside of work, right? And so I think the fact that women get scared off from environments where there's a lot of guys, I think that's a cop-out excuse. I think women should get into an environment regardless of what the makeup of that environment is, and then if you feel like people are going to judge you, then make sure you're awesome and make sure that you prove them wrong.
Great. Okay, I think that is pretty much all I wanted to address. Actually, one other thing. So I guess with the whole investorship, and I assume Floodgate is technically a super angel investing firm. Is that what it deems itself? Okay. I know, especially in the Silicon Valley, those types seem to fund technical companies. Do you think that there is that same kind of interest in non-technical companies, people that want to start things outside of e-commerce or just heavily internet-based sites?
I don't know. I mean, because again, I only invest in technology companies, right? And so I'm sure there are angels out there that invest in a lot of other types of companies. There are companies like Tea Collection or Serena and Lily, which, Tea Collection makes baby clothes, and it's located out in San Francisco and is founded by one of the co-founders was a Stanford GSB grad, and she's awesome. There's another, two women who have started Serena and Lily up in Marin, and they make basically really fancy bedding for babies as well as now for adults, and that's also been wildly successful. Sure, there's an online component to it, but these are companies that are, brands essentially. Right. They've gotten funding from angels. There are also even Tiny Prints, which was a company that, if you look at all your Christmas cards, chances are most of them came from Tiny Prints. That also didn't get any VC funding. They got a few angels cobbled together and then eventually raised the big private equity round. But again, it's an example of a company that isn't really e-commerce, but it's innovating on a bunch of different factors that are influenced by the internet. And so I think that there are a lot of different avenues for entrepreneurs who are outside of the traditional tech sector.
And I guess for anyone listening to this conversation, I guess too, who's interested in finding angel investors, what's the best way to go about even approaching them, or how do you get connected with these people?
I think you need to find a mentor or an advisor to your company that is well connected into that world. Okay. Most super angels and VCs are pretty much bombarded with requests. And so it's easy to filter out most of those over the transom requests unless you have a good sort of qualified introduction. And even those, you have to make sure that that mentor is able to provide a really good pitch as to why your company is unique.
Okay, Great. Okay, well, thank you so much. I really appreciate for you're taking the time for talking to me. And that's pretty much it.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Thanks. Have a great day. Bye.